Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and I am very excited for today's video because today I'm going to be giving you some sapphic romance recommendations. February, it is the month of love, and on my channel we are going to be talking about all sorts of love and romance topics, and I wanted to do some romance book recommendation, and in Ren fashion I had to highlight my love for the sapphics. For those of you who don't know, I'm a lesbian and I make it my personal mission to read as many sapphic books as humanly possible, so if you have any sapphic book recommendations I don't mention on my list, or if you just have any in general, leave me as many as you can in the comments. I would love to check them out. And with that being said, let's just get into the recommendations. Also, quick note, a trigger warning for the first book I'm going to be talking about, Girls of Paper and Fire. I'm going to be mentioning sexual assault and rape because that is something that happens in the book. If you're not comfortable hearing that, feel free to skip over to the next book recommendation. I will put a time on the screen here for you to jump to if you're not comfortable reading about this. Totally fair. Girls of Paper and Fire is a young adult fantasy novel, and we are following Lei, who is a member of the paper caste. In this book we have three different caste systems. We have the paper caste, the steel caste, and the moon caste, and all of the caste systems are based on if someone is human or if they're a demon. So the paper class are humans, the steel class are part human, part demon, and the moon caste are the demons. And in this world, I don't remember if there's a title for it or what exactly it's called, but Lei is chosen along with 8 other girls to become the king's courtesans, and that's essentially the premise of the book. And she is chosen because of her golden eyes that are shown here on the cover. Side note, this cover is gorgeous. I just recently got a physical copy of this actually, and I'm in love with the back of the book. Like, can we just please appreciate how beautiful this book is? Literally one of my favorite things ever. I literally bought all 3 books very recently, and all of the covers are so stunning, so beautiful, and I would highly recommend that you guys check out this book. In this book, there is a romance between Lei and one of the other girls named Ren. And listen, this is not on this list just because I share the name of the love interest, but I will say it was really cool when I was reading it. I really did enjoy that. And the reason I have this on this list is because I related a lot to Lei, and I really enjoyed hearing how all of the girls responded different to this trauma that they're going through. And it was really refreshing because I think, especially in YA, as I'm sure most of you know, for a while there was kind of that trend that was just atrocious, where sexual assault and rape was just glorified and it was just romanticized and it was awful. And I really hesitated to pick up this book for a really long time because I was afraid that was going to be the case, and that was not. I really appreciated how sexual trauma was handled in this book. I related to it so much, and I thought it was really beautiful how Ren and Lei found each other in this book. I love them both so much, and this book really helped me a lot to feel a lot less alone in my own trauma, and to just, I don't know, it was just a really important read for me personally, and I knew I could not make this video without mentioning this book because literally this book helped me so much. I really appreciate romances where heavy topics and really important topics like this are covered and discussed. I think it's super important. And you'll notice that on this list, I'm pretty sure almost all of these books cover really important, really heavy topics that are really emotional. Because for me, those are what make books stand out, and those are what make me connect to characters and romances so much more. Because while I definitely love me a nice, like, good, like, light-hearted romance that doesn't touch on dark subjects, I think that those are almost never favorites of mine. Sometimes when you're going through such an awful thing, and you just, you don't expect to fall in love, you don't expect to find this romance, but then you do, and it was so beautifully done. I cannot recommend this book enough. Seriously, if you haven't read it yet, and if you are in the mental space to read it, I would highly recommend that you check it out. The next book on my list is How to Make a Wish by Ashley Heron Blake. This is definitely an author that I want to read a lot more from. This is another YA novel. It is a hard-hitting YA contemporary, and honestly, I'm sure that most of you guys watching have read this book or at least know what this book is about, but in case you don't, this follows a girl named Grace kind of dealing with her mother, who is very unpredictable, and looking back on it, definitely has some sort of, I'm pretty sure, undiagnosed mental illness of some kind. This book talks a lot about Grace and the relationship that she has with her mother. as well as falling in love with this girl named Ava. I really, this was just a really good book. I related a lot to Grace's feelings about her mother. I really felt for Grace in this novel. And again, it was just so beautiful seeing how when Grace was going through this really rough patch, how meeting Ava and falling in love with her was just like this light at the end of the tunnel. And it just, their romance was so beautiful. I love them together so much. And I actually put it in my notes for this video to read one of the pages. Genuinely don't remember what page I was going to read. So let's just go ahead and check out a page. So hopefully if you are thinking about reading this might help you to decide if you want to read it or not. I lean closer, needing her closer, needing me closer, and soon she's right there, her mouth inches from mine. I stop, remembering she's never kissed anyone before. She searches my face, and wonder is the only word for her expression. I close the tiny distance between us just a bit and let my lower lip brush hers. She sucks in a breath, so I stay there, letting her make the last move. She does, and her eyes flick down to my mouth once, then she presses her lips to mine, soft and warm. I cup the back of her neck to pull her closer. Our tongues touch, gently at first, but then her thumb sweeps over my cheek and I feel wild, like I need to devour her right there. She tastes like summer, like running and laughter, and the combination is so heady that I have to force myself to slow down and savor this moment. It's a first for me too. Okay, I have a desire to reread this entire novel now. Oh my god, I'm gonna want to reread everything on this list as I'm talking about them. But there's a little sample of this. I hope that convinced you to read it, because that convinced me to reread it. The next book is a book that I will wager no one watching this video has ever heard of, and that is Bleeding Earth by Caitlin Ward. This is not my typical novel. This is a YA horror novel, and I almost never read horror. I think this is the only horror book I have ever read in my life, and I only read it because of the romance. So I got this for my birthday, I think my freshman year of high school, which, to be fair, was only 4 years ago, but still, 4 years is a pretty long fucking time. And this book follows a girl named, I think her name's Leah. And Leah. So Leah is a lesbian. Very important. Her girlfriend in this is named Arsley, and this book basically revolves on I think it's considered an post-apocalyptic? I don't know, something with all that, where basically the earth is bleeding, literally, and it has hair and nails, and it's very gross. And listen, I cannot comment on if the horror is good in this, because I read this forever ago, and I truly just remember the romance, and also, I'm not a horror reader in general, so I'm, the worst person to comment on the horror of this. But if anyone is a horror reader, please read this and let me know if this is good horror or not, because I'm actually kind of curious if this is considered good horror or not, honestly. And the reason I really loved the relationship in this book is because, very similar to the other two books, I just really enjoy seeing how relationships work when you are dealing with a lot. I just really enjoy seeing how their relationship was kind of handled, since obviously they're going through a lot with basically the implied end of the world, I guess. I really enjoyed how the sexuality was handled in this. I did not expect for it to talk about coming out at all, just because I think that in a lot of fantasy like this, well, it's not fantasy, but in a lot of non-contemporary stories, I feel we don't really, a lot of authors don't really talk about coming out and homophobia and that kind of thing, and I think that's totally fair and valid, and I don't blame authors for that. Just mentioning that because it just kind of surprised me. I wasn't expecting for it to touch on coming out that much. So on the off chance that you've read this book, the scene with Leah's mother at the end of the book, oh my god, first of all, I was not expecting that. It was such a good scene. That scene, it wrecked me, and honestly, the ending of this book was fantastic. I really did enjoy this book. So if you're looking for a cute sapphic horror novel, honestly, I would highly recommend this book. I think it's really good, and I do have a couple pages written down, so let's go ahead and read out those pages. Do I remember why I wrote them down? No, we'll find out together. The first page I said is 54. Irritation flashes through me. He should appreciate this more. He gets to sit with his girlfriend at lunch, and it's just normal, expected. He's not making any statement about himself, not creating any gossip, not losing any friends. If Arsley sat with us, she would be talking to everyone right now, getting to know them, not frowning at her plate. Yes, and this is what I'm talking about. I really, really, really enjoyed how sexuality and homophobia was talked about. I really love it. Okay, the next one is page 94. Okay, so this is talking about Leah's best friend, Hillary. Hillary can't grasp the idea that Arsley's friends might have a harder time being supportive than mine. That maybe Arsley has had feelings for one of them in the past and it makes them uncomfortable, or that they might get offended if she hasn't. Arsley's friends seem great. She says nothing but good things about them, but I understand more than Hillary ever could why Arsley hasn't come out to them yet. You don't want it to be this thing you have to say. You just want to feel how you feel and not have it matter, but it does. And it might change nothing. Her relationships with her friends might just go on as ever. But it also might change everything. If Arsley isn't prepared yet to potentially face that, then I will keep on being patient. And even though I wish we could openly be a couple, I am truly okay with waiting until she's ready. And again, I just loved how the author handled coming out in this scene. I really loved how, even though Hillary is definitely an ally, I really appreciated how kind of the author talks about how even though if you're straight and even though if you truly are an ally, that you'll never understand what it's like to be gay, to have to come out, to have to deal with a lot of the microaggressions that you have to deal with when you come out. And oh my god, I loved how this was handled in this book. Seriously, it was amazing. I really do love this book. I love the romance so much, and I would definitely recommend for you to check it out if you're interested. The next book is actually the only book I don't own, and that is because I very recently bought a Kindle Unlimited subscription, and I found out that they have sapphic mangas on Kindle Unlimited. So you bet your ass that I picked up Alter Ego. I forget what the author's name is. This is by Anna C. Sanchez, and I'm not sure if this is considered adult or young adult. That kind of confused me when I was reading because it seems like it's adult because the love interest, which we'll talk about her in a second, she lives on her own. Like, she doesn't live with any of her family. So I'm assuming she's an adult, I would think. But then they have certain scenes where it looks like they're definitely in an educational setting. And I think that might be university. I'm not sure. On Storygraph, it's not marked as young adult. So I listed it on everything as adult for my spreadsheets. But if anyone's read this book and you know, let me know in the comments because I'm kind of confused. This book follows Noelle, who has been crushing really hard on her best friend, Elena, for years. And I can totally tell why, because she is super fucking cute. Just saying. But then at the start of the story, Elena is very rude and gets a boyfriend, and Noelle is obviously very upset about this. And then basically right at the same time, one of Elena's best friends who previously lived in a different city comes to live in the city that they live in. And Noelle is not happy about that. This is a super cute enemies to lovers manga, and I loved this book so much. Loved how the topic of crushing on your straight friend was like handled, because I think that a lot of authors try to handle this in fiction a lot, and I just feel like a lot of the time it just doesn't come across right. I think that it can make the lesbian character or bisexual or whatever their identity is, I think it can really make them just seem like to be just a real bitch. I feel like sometimes it can make them feel entitled to me. Sometimes I just don't think it's handled well. But that was not the case with this book. I really liked how it was handled, and I really felt for Noelle. While Noelle really loves Elena, she knows that Elena is not into her. And while she's obviously not happy about that, she does accept it by the end of the book, which was just so beautiful to see. And again, I related to her so much. I really loved this manga. It was really beautiful, and it was a little confusing to read because, for the record, this is my first time reading a manga. I have read a lot of graphic novels, but manga and graphic novels are not the same, and I did not realize how different they are from each other. I will say though, I think that because I have seen like on TikTok like a lot of videos on how to read manga, and I definitely think this one, from what I've seen from other people's mangas, is a little bit easier to read panel wise. So I'm not a manga expert, obviously, but I think that if you have never read manga before, I had a fairly easy time reading this one, so I would recommend that you check it out. And if you haven't read manga, I will link the TikTok by Princess of Paperback that I watched to figure out how to read manga, because I was indeed confused. Like the other books on this list, this book touched on a lot of important topics, namely the love interest, whose name is June, and her relationship with her mother. Her mother was emotionally abusive to her, so definitely a trigger warning for that. And I was really happy with how that was handled. And again, I really liked how Noelle's feelings for Elena were handled, and the progression from enemies to friends to lovers was really well done. I really enjoyed it, and like I said, I would highly recommend that you check this one out. And that brings us to the last book on this list, which I saved for last, not because it's my favorite. Well, it might be my favorite. I don't know. It's definitely a very good one, but I decided to save this one for last because I barely remember anything about it. And that is The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. So for the record, I don't think this is a forgettable book. I just have a really shitty memory. This book is an adult historical romance. It is sapphic, obviously, and we are following Lucy and Catherine St. Day. And Catherine St. Day has basically just sent out a letter because her husband has just died, and she sends it to Lucy's father and is basically like, hey, I have an astronomy text in French. I need you to translate for my husband. Deal with it. I don't want to have to deal with it anymore. Lucy's dad has been dead for a certain amount of time. I don't remember how long. So basically, Lucy goes to Catherine's and it's like, hey, I know that I'm a woman, and I know that they want a man to translate this because it's the 1800s and bitches are sexist, but I'm really passionate about it, so I want to translate it. And after some convincing, Catherine lets Lucy say so that she can translate the text, and they fall in love, romance ensues, all that good shit. This book was so good. Again, like every other book on this list, I am now realizing every book on this list talks about at least one really important topic, which I really love. And this book talks predominantly about sexism and about being queer in the 1800s. There are also other topics are explored, like grief and like moving on from your past relationships. So as far as female romances go, I would say this is probably my favorite one when it comes to the sex scenes, because I think a lot of sex scenes with sapphic books are very light on the steam. You know, we don't really get to see what's happening. We get the emotions, and it's soft and cute, and that's great. But I really like smut. I really like steaminess, and oh my god, this book definitely delivers on the steam. I wouldn't say it's the most steamy thing in the world, and also keep in mind, I have not reread this book in a hot minute, so I could not tell you what the steam level is in this. I also don't really get steam levels, so you shouldn't be asking me anyways. These are definitely some of my favorite sex scenes that I've read, especially with just like the consent and everything in it. It's just so mwah, so good. I really loved it. And I also loved how, even though Lucy is the younger one between them, she is a lot more experienced when it comes to being with women and having sex with women and that kind of thing. And I really loved it. And also there is a big focus on astronomy in this book, and I know that from the reviews I've read, some people really don't like that. Personally, I thought it was really interesting. I really like when characters have certain interests in books, even when I don't like them. Well, not when I don't like them, but even when I'm not interested in that topic in general, just because I think we can really see how characters are passionate about something. And especially since her interest in astronomy correlated a lot to the sexism of the time and her having to deal with that, I just really liked it. If you haven't checked out this book, I would highly recommend. Also, quick side note, because this is part of a series, so I DNF'd the second book because I didn't care for it. I would be willing to give that one a second shot though. And I have not read the third book, but I definitely think the third book is a little bit more up my alley. So I think I'm going to really like the third book in this series. And with that being said, that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope I was able to give you guys some good sapphic romance recommendations. And like I said, if you have any recs for me, leave them in the comments, okay? I want to hear your recs. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a big thumbs up and hit that favorite subscribe button down below and turn on those post notifications so that you know every time that I upload. And stay tuned for next week, because for all the writers out there, I'm going to be breaking down how to structure your romance novel. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!